Derwin James is one of the most electric players in the NFL and already one of the greatest Charger safeties of all time with 3 All-Pro teams to show for it, but has he done enough to get into the Hall of Fame?
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogemeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons together, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you to the everydayers out there for making us your first listen. To make sure that you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. David, what do we got today?
Well, Daniel, there's not much that Derwin James cannot do on a football field. He is truly a fantastic football player, but has he done enough to make the Hall of Fame? I don't know about that yet, but he, I think, is on his way to get there. And I think the Chargers have one of the deepest and best safety groups in the entire NFL. They have a lot to offer in that room. And Tarheeb Still is a fantastic player, had a great rookie season, and I think we can already stake the claim that he's the best corner on the Chargers right now.
Yeah, I don't think that is an overreaction at all. And it is Tuesday, meaning it's buy or sell Tuesday. That was supposed to be a buy or sell Monday. Thank you for your patience. But today we are getting into the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions as we do every week on our buy or sell show. And we have a great one to start with, a great future question, I believe, or great future buy or sell, because this one hasn't been accomplished yet, in my opinion, but still could. From Prefontaine, who says, buy or sell, Derwin will make the Hall of Fame. If not right now, what does he need to do to get himself a gold jacket? In my opinion, he needs his interception numbers up. I think that's a good call. I don't think at this point, like, the interception total for his career is ever going to get to the point where you're going to be like, oh, well, those are Hall of Fame numbers with interceptions. It's just never really been his game. But I think when you're looking at what constitutes as a Hall of Fame player, I think you have to kind of look at the All-Pro teams, right? Are you the first or second best player at your position in any given year? And I think when you look at that, he's off to a pretty good start from that regard. 3-time All-Pro, all-second team, though, 2018, 2022, and then last year he made it in 2024 as well. But David, I think when you look at his career right now, you see, okay, well, this guy obviously is a Hall of Fame talent. He's one of the greatest Charger safeties of all time, but there is some work still to be done if he wants to someday get that gold jacket.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, when you look at Derwin James's career so far, he has been a machine all over the football field. Has 3 seasons over 100 tackles. But yeah, the interception numbers only has 9 so far, and the most that he has had in his NFL career was his rookie season where he had 3 interceptions. So those numbers are definitely going to have to go up, but I think they're going to have to go up to coincide with more first-team All-Pro selections. That's what really is going to have to push him over the top. And I think when you look at Derwin James, he's 29 years old, and I think probably you could see about 4 to 5 years of good viability left. And I think to be able to get that, just ultimate honor, to be able to punch his ticket, to get that, that sized for that gold jacket, he's probably going to have to get at least 3 more first-team All-Pro nods, in my opinion, while continuing to do what he does as a pass rusher and while getting those interception numbers up, which also means that he's going to have to stay on the field to be able to perform at this very, very high level.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of what that number needs to get to. I think that obviously the one kind of missing piece of his resume right now are the first team All-Pros, because he's done it 3 times on the second team, which is nothing to sneeze at, of course. But at the same time, I think if you add 2 more first team All-Pro nods, then you're looking at something where you're like, okay, well, this is a pretty complete resume. I don't put a bunch of stock into Pro Bowl teams, but I do think with Derwin James, the hard part in evaluating his actual Hall of Fame resume is the fact that he had basically 2 whole seasons that he missed. That's what's killing him. The fact that he's going into his age 29 season and basically missed out on 2 prime years to be able to get those kind of awards. Because when you're talking about, his second and third seasons, right, that he would have been able to fully play, or third and fourth, those were prime time chances for him to be able to rack up first team All-Pros. But this is how I look at it. just from like, because I think there is something of an eye test, right? Or just something of a kind of a, okay, well, what do you think when you think of the best safeties over the past decade? If you're telling me or asking me who the best safeties are over the past decade, I don't know how many names you're getting through before you get to Derwin James, right? I mean, you'd say, okay, maybe a Minka Fitzpatrick, or who has 3 first-team All-Pros, but no second-team All-Pros. So they have the same amount of All-Pro selections, which is crazy. Or Tyrann Mathieu, who has 3 first-team All-Pro selections, but no second-team selections, right? Then you see a guy like Budda Baker, 2 first-team, 2 second-team, 4 total nods. I mean, I think Derwin James has been a better player than Budda Baker overall throughout his career. But I'd say there's probably an argument for Minka Fitzpatrick, who's just been there a long time. Tyrann Mathieu, obviously a game-changing player. But man, if you were one of the top 2 or 3 safeties of your generation, what does that do, right? And you have up-and-comers who might challenge that as well. But I do think that if you're talking about in the last 10 years, David, how many safeties are better than Derwin James is, I just don't think you're going to be able to come up with very many of them.
Yeah, no, I think that it's a fantastic point. And I think when we're talking about Derwin James, it's not just about, his coverage ability. It's not just about his tackling ability. It's also the leadership. It's also his just ability to just knock people back and really enforce his kind of way of playing the game. And he's a true difference maker. There's a few players out there that when they're on the field, they're going to make plays. It's not a question of if, it's when. And Derwin James is that type of player. When he's on the field, he's going to affect the game. And I think that's part of it when you look at Hall of Fame. Did this player completely take over or have the ability to change the course of a football game? And I think with Derwin James' extensive skill set, I think you can say that he absolutely has that ability to do that.
And I think the other part of it is he has those moments, right? You have him pile driving Travis Kelce on the goal line against the Chiefs in prime time. You have just the legal blow up hits that he's had in his career and delivered. And I do think there's something to be said about being the last of a dying breed.
Yeah.
Being really the last of that. You don't want to go over the middle enforcer type of safeties where, I mean, how many guys really still play that way? Derwin James had to, talk with officials during the offseason to consult just to figure out how he could keep playing this way. And they still, suspended him last year egregiously, in my opinion. But ridiculous. I would say that he is the last of a dying breed. And I do think that means something, the name value, the name brand value, the moments. But what will help him as well is team success and being able to have those moments in the playoffs. That's another thing that would be great additions to what is a pretty good Hall of Fame resume for someone that is absolutely a Hall of Fame talent. But let's get to this buy or sell from Rezel Azir, who says, buy or sell, Derwin James will finish in the top 5 in the Defensive Player of the Year voting in 2025. Very hard to do at his position. He would have to put up a ridiculous season. But hey, David, if he somehow wins the Defensive Player of the Year, I think that probably automatically comes with a first-team All-Pro. Then you could probably get that jacket fitted right now. But do you think there's a chance he can get into the top 5 of the Defensive Player of the Year voting in 2025?
Man, that's just such an unbelievably difficult thing to do, and it's not just really it's not a position that you really see win the award very often. I mean, the last safety who won the Defensive Player of the Year award was 15 years ago with Troy Polamalu. So I just think if Derwin James wants to try to win that award or even get to top 5, it's going to require, probably 8, 9, almost 10 sacks, probably 4 or 5 interceptions. Like it's going to take, like 100 plus. It's going to take a just superhuman Herculean effort. And that's why I think just because of the position he plays and because there's edge rushers out there that can rack up a ton of sacks, and it's just a lot easier to get those guys in the voting for that, I'm going to sell it.
Yeah, I'm going to sell it too, just because of how hard I think it is to do it. And I think people say, well, top 5 seems maybe attainable. It's such an edge rusher heavy thing. Every once in a while, like last year, you'll have a Pat Surtain who is just so great that he wins it, even though he didn't have the gaudy stats, or a Stephon Gilmore winning it, 2019 after a ridiculous season. The last time a safety was top 5 in Defensive Player of the Year voting was 2016. That's been how long since somebody's even tried to, or even cracked the top 5 of Defensive Player of the Year. And that year he had 5 interceptions and 4 sacks and 125 tackles. It would take something around that. In my mind, it would have to be like 7 sacks, 5 interceptions, and 100 tackles, somewhere around 100 tackles. You don't see safeties getting 7 sacks. That would be a number that stood out. But Kirby Joseph finished 6th in Defensive Player of the Year voting last year. He had 9 interceptions last year, just to show you how hard it is to crack that top 5. But we know Derwin James is great. The question now is the Chargers safety group in general the best in the NFL? We're going to talk about all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. As a small business owner, your work doesn't end when the clock hits 5. Your business is always on your mind, which means when it's time to hire, you need a partner that works just as hard as you do, and that's where LinkedIn Jobs comes in. When you clock out, LinkedIn clocks in. LinkedIn makes it easy to post your job for free, share it with your network, and get qualified candidates all in one place. LinkedIn's new feature can help you write job descriptions and then quickly get your job in front of the right people with deep candidate insights. And here's a pro tip: add the hashtag hiring frame to your profile picture to double your reach to qualified candidates. No wonder 72% of small businesses say that LinkedIn helps them find high quality hires. Not only is it fast, but it's about the quality of the hire too, because the last thing that you want is be able to fill a job and then need to refill that job only a couple months later. Having the right fit in your ecosystem is huge, and you can do that with LinkedIn. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, we still have more great buy or sells to get into here on a Buy or Sell Tuesday, getting into the biggest Charger storylines and overreactions. And I want to get to this one from Matthew Dahl on YouTube, because you can get us anywhere. Instagram at Locked On Chargers. We'll put a post out on our YouTube for the next fan mail show, and also hitting us up on Twitter at Locked On LAC. But we have a good one. Buy or sell, the Chargers will have the best safety room in the NFL in 2025. David, are you buying or selling that?
Yeah, I think I'm going to buy this one, which I think, going into last season was an incredulous statement to make. But I think when you look at, the top end talent, it's there, obviously, with Derwin James. Then you bring in Elijah Molden, who quickly became one of the best free safeties in the NFL last year, getting the right opportunity. He just had to get put in the right situation to succeed, and he absolutely took the bull by the horns and made the most of his opportunity. Then you have the quality depth, and you have other great starting players that can get on the field and play at a high level for you right away, like Alohi Gilman, like Tony Jefferson. And then you bring in a rookie like RJ Mickens. So I just think when you look at the group from top to bottom, you have players and you have depth that if somebody goes down, you have somebody that can step on the field and at least provide a good baseline level quality of play. And I think that's why you have to consider the Chargers as having the best safety group in the NFL.
And I think they reinforced that last season, or at least the belief that they could be that this year, with how well they transitioned guys who had never played in this defense to get them up to speed quickly and playing at a high level. Like, nobody got hurt. Like, it was crazy how many guys they cycled through that, whether it was Marcus May or Eddie Jackson, whoever it was, and they still at least maintained a level of defense that was respectable. They weren't just obvious parts where you could try to target them and be able to say, okay, this is the weak link in that safety group. This is what needs to, attack, which last year going into the season, we were hugely concerned about whoever that next safety on the field was between, after Derwin James and Alohi Gilman. And even Alohi Gilman has been up and down at times in his career. So the fact that they were able to get Elijah Molden, like you said, to become one of the better free safeties in the league, especially considering, David, like, Poona Ford losing him sucked.
Yes.
I might have been more upset if they lost Elijah Molden, truly, just because think about how long this team has been searching for that player.
Yes.
To fit with Derwin James, right? You've had the strong safety locked down. You tried to work JT Woods into it. It didn't work, right? Before that,
Even before
you spent a second round pick on Nazir Adderley, and that one didn't work out, right? So they've been searching for that guy for a really long time. Now, they've also been searching for a defensive tackle to have the season that Poona Ford did last year for a long time too. But like, that's how important it was for them to bring this guy back. I'd say the team, I would buy it. I think the team that would have the best argument is probably the Ravens, because not only do they have Kyle Hamilton, who may be the best safety in the league at his, best, but they just drafted Malachi Starks in the first round. The reason I'm giving the Chargers the edge is because Marcus Williams had a down year last season. Nobody's questioning Kyle Hamilton, but also the fact that their kind of standout young player, Darius Washington, is out for the season already. Had he not been, had that unfortunate thing, I might say it's the Ravens here, and we'll just have to see how good Malachi Starks is, because if he's as good as everyone said, they're going to have a good chance to do that this year too. But I think that Elijah Molden and Derwin James are the best duo. And I think, like you said, after that, you have good experience, right? You have a young player in RJ Mickens that can bring some of that athleticism and some youth to the back end too. So I like him. Let's get to this one from Tino here, buy or sell. My bold prediction that Tarheeb Still will take a leap and emerge as the best cornerback in the team in 2025. Well, I don't think that's that bold because, David, I'd say right now I'm buying that 100% because I think Tarheeb Still is the best corner currently on this team.
Yeah, I'm about to say he just needs to emerge from the locker room and proceed to the football field, and then he's the best corner on the Chargers football team. I think last year he proved it. In 14 games, a passer rating allowed of 79.1. He allowed 73 yards or less in all 14 games that he played, and that 73 was the top end. So no 100 receiving yard games whatsoever at any point last season. And I think, he had the 4 interceptions, right? So coming in right away, making game-changing and impact type plays for Tarheeb Still, we know that his opportunity to turn into that complete corner is to tackle better, to take better angles, to try to be a little bit more measured when you're going to take those chances and when you need to make sure that you wall those players off and you get them on the ground and you make those tackles that don't turn into 40, 50-yard plays or touchdowns. So I think that's the next step. That's how he, solidifies himself not only as the best corner on the Chargers, but one of the better young corners in the league.
Absolutely. And he definitely was overshadowed last year because the Super Bowl champion Eagles had 2 of those dudes on their team, right? With Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. So that was tough for Tarheeb Still because I think there would be a very different narrative about him had those guys not just played out of their minds and ended up winning a Super Bowl, and in large part to how well they played, right? So I think that for him, it's nice to hear Steve Quinscale, who you trust because of how well he did with that secondary last year, raving about him and his leadership, and Khalil Mack taking him under his wing. It feels like he's doing all of the things that you need to do, putting in the work as well to continue and build off of a great rookie season. But it is about the consistency, and that's why I liked hearing Steve Quinscale bring that up, right? Where it's like, hey, he's got to tackle better, and he's got to learn better when to contain and be able to not go inside of a blocker and leave the outside open for big plays to happen, like we saw with Mike Evans at one point. Marvin Mims had a long play because of that too. So those are the things where it's like, man, I've said it all off season. If he can straighten those things out, not only can be one of the best young corners in the NFL, he can just be one of the best corners in the NFL, and it would not surprise me at all to see him have a 6 or 7 interception season. So I'd be I think it's more of a bold prediction to say that we'll get to the end of 2025 and not think of Tarheeb Still as the Chargers' best cornerback. But we do have a theory here. We talked about the safeties. We talked about the corners. What about the whole group as a unit? How good can they be?
Daniel, David, that's the overreaction bio sell Monday. The Chargers secondary will be a top 3 pass defense in the NFL this coming season. I'm buying it. Stay tuned for Bold Prediction Friday. You cannot wait for this, Daniel. Love you.
We love you. And that's a good question because I think, when you hear us raving about them having the best safety group in the NFL and, how good Tarheeb Still could be, it would maybe make you think that this would be an easy buy, but I have to sell this one. And I think it's less of an indictment of the Chargers secondary specifically, more than it is just the realization of the quarterbacks and the wide receivers that they're going to have to play in 25, David, because this has been something we've talked about earlier in the offseason. They have a murderer's row of wide receiver ones and quarterbacks that they just didn't have on the schedule in 2024.
Yeah, and like that's going to cause some mayhem for the Chargers. And yes, they have a lot of talent in the secondary. I do believe that. But also, I would say that I don't know if the pass rushing group right now gives me enough confidence to also believe that the secondary can be top 3, because we know one of a really good secondary's best friends is a really, really good pass rush. And I don't know if I can stamp my name on saying the Chargers have that really good pass rush at this moment in time.
Especially on the interior, where is that extra pass rush going to come that you lost with Morgan Fox and Poona Ford, right? Somebody's going to have to pick up those snaps, and they have guys that they think they can do it. I mean, Mike Elston said he thought this was a better group than they had last season, and last season they told us they had a pretty good group, and we laughed in their face We straight up laughed in their face, and they were right. It was a very good group for them last year, and it ended up being a strength. But you're talking about Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., A.J. Brown, C.D. Lamb. Whereas last year, you had, quarterbacks-wise going up against Gardner Minshew and Spencer Rattler and Will Levis and Aiden O'Connell and Jameis Winston and Justin Fields and Bryce Young. The list goes on and on. It's going to be a different challenge and a different monster to try to attack. And I agree. The reason that I was selling it as well is because of that pass rush and just the question marks you have there, not just on the outside if Tuli can take that leap. Can Kyle Kennard be that situational guy? But do you have the pass rush that would necessitate, or prove that you could have this? I mean, the Chargers last year were 7th in pass defense, I believe, 6th or 7th as far as yards allowed. This year they have a tougher slate. And so I think it's going to be very, very hard for them to be top 3 in 2025. But we still have more great stuff to get into, including if the Chargers fan base is being too harsh on Quentin Johnston. We're getting into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. We still have more great stuff to get into on this Buy or Sell Tuesday. Thank you to the everydayers out there, not only for making us your first listen, but also for contributing on today's show, whether it was on Twitter at LockedOnLAC, Instagram at LockedOnChargers, or if you sent a 30-second voicemail into 323-524-7924. Let me also just say, we had so many great buy or sells over the weekend that we will definitely be getting some more of them on Friday's show because we had such a surplus when we get to our fan mail show. Hopefully tomorrow we'll be talking about actual Chargers practice. That's what the plan is. But if you guys need a second listen, make sure to check out the Locked On NFL Scouting Show with our guys Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino after the draft, as they make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason, keeping you up with all the coming and goings of all NFL teams on YouTube and wherever you get your podcast from. Dave, let's get back into these buy or sells. And we have a good one here from Jackson who says, buy or sell, the Chargers fan base needs to hop off of Quentin Johnston's jock. His career is not determined after the first 2 years. Devontae Adams had a couple of rough seasons in the NFL, and he has flourished ever since. Not saying QJ will be a Hall of Famer, but give him grace. David, are you buying or selling this?
Yeah, this is the easiest buy in the world for me. I think, yes, the Charger fans are very, very critical of his game. And does he have obvious deficiencies? For sure. But I think there's a point where you're bordering when you're taking critical and being critical of a player and then just talking trash about a player. And I think there is a distinction.
Or even
there.
Rooting against him, I think, in some cases, where it feels like some Chargers fans want him to be bad to kind of maybe validate the point that they have.
Which is crazy to me. As a Charger fan, we should all want Quentin Johnston to be better, to do better, because it's only going to improve the Chargers offense. And so also, let's not be blind here. Quentin Johnston clearly got better from his rookie season to his sophomore season. Did he benefit from several broken coverage touchdowns? Absolutely. But he also was able to get open a little bit more. He was catching the football a little bit better. Yes, still had the drop issues. The yards after catch per catch went up. So he did do some positive things. And also, your development doesn't stop when you enter the NFL. No one is a finished product. If anything, I feel like it accelerates, and he's still in the middle of his rookie contract. Whenever you get picked as a first-round pick, your expectations are astronomically high to produce right away. It doesn't always happen, but for Quentin Johnston, he definitely needs to show another level of progression this season. He needs to catch the football a little bit more effectively. He needs to get better at creating some separation against man coverage. He's got to get a little bit better at contested catch situations. But I think because of all the other type of receivers that the Chargers were able to bring in, they can use Quentin Johnston more effectively in what he does well. And I think that will, in turn, provide a better version of Quentin Johnston and a better version of the offense for the Chargers.
Yeah, that's what the plan has to be. I mean, the thing is now is you hope that he can break out. I think the hard thing is there's no real gray area with fans right now on Quentin Johnston. You either think, he could have another breakout season in 2025, or that he's just a total bust and they need to get rid of him and he could actually get cut from this roster when things get trimmed down. when there's so much gray area in between that. And I think Stephen Haglund did a great job from Guilty as Charged of kind of putting together the improvements that he made and giving him credit for those improvements, because the advanced metrics told you he got better, as well as, almost doubling his yards and yards per game and quadrupling his touchdowns, even though he missed 2 games last year. So obviously there's certain counting stats that show you just how much better he got, but he's still far from a finished product. And I think that is just obviously in those big moments when the lights are brightest, him not being able to come through time and time again last season, whether it was the Ravens game, right, or obviously the Texans game. Both those games, 5 targets, 0 receptions, and drops in both of them. So that has to be the big thing. And I think for now, it's just going to be him having the mental fortitude to fight off the other guys that are coming for those snaps, because give the Chargers credit. They couldn't wait to make sure that Quentin Johnston could take another leap. They went and got guys that they could, potentially take those snaps from him if he doesn't keep improving. So it'll be up to him. The scuttlebutt around is, hey, Quentin Johnston sees those receivers and he's working extra hard and all these things, and he's getting even better. We'll see, because if he's not, he's going to lose snaps, because they have other guys that can go do those things now. So I do think the hate, as it does oftentimes for first-round picks that aren't producing at elite levels, is going to go too far, and it's not his fault that he was a first-round pick and really shouldn't have been, right? But I do think that, hey, if he can keep improving, this is a weapon for your offense. Now, should he be the top receiver? Should he be the second-best receiver? That's hard to say without other major improvements, right? Is he a weapon? Is there things that he brings to the table that are positives? Absolutely. If you can lean more into those, even better. But let's get to this next one from Instagram. We have Luca Neal saying, buy or sell with the new tight end additions, we will see Will Dissly disappear as a receiving threat. David, a lot of new weapons. Are we going to see Will Dissly's receiving game disappear?
Yeah, I think disappear is a pretty drastic word here, but I think that I'm confident that the Chargers were never expecting Will Dissly to be that involved in the passing game when they signed him, to the multi-year contract that they did. Will Dissly's best work is done as a blocking tight end. And hey, he did some great things as kind of a screen guy. That tight end screen was pretty deadly for them. And yeah, he made some pretty good catches. But I believe he was very much overextended. And I don't think that they have to do that this year now when they have a guy like a Tyler Conklin, when they draft a guy like a Rondé Gadsden II. You have legitimate, real receiving options. Will he still be involved in the passing game? Yeah, I think he will be, but it'll be a lot less than it was last year, because they didn't really have a choice last year. They were expecting Hayden Hurst to be that guy. He absolutely was not. So he had to go and kind of take more of that responsibility as a receiver than he really ever had before. And to his credit, he did pretty well with it.
He did great, so much better than anyone thought he would have, and I think to what your point is about just them not thinking he would have to be that guy. I mean, you go back and look at the first quarter of last season, those first 4 games, Hayden Hurst was actually out-snapping Will Dissly, which seems crazy. So for them to bring in Tyler Conklin to improve upon the role they believed that Hayden Hurst would have last year, which is so funny thinking about Andy Bischoff telling us, there's nothing keeping Hayden Hurst from being one of those like top 5 receiving tight ends in the NFL last season. Hopefully he thinks Tyler Conklin can be that. But they wanted it to be Hayden Hurst last year, and it just never happened for them. That being said, I would sell this because I do just think he's going to be on the field so much. They want to be able to run the football. He is easily their best run blocking tight end. Period. End of story. You can't only have him on the field for running downs, right? Because it takes all of the kind of suspicion away from the play action, all the things that he really kind of thrived in doing last season. So I don't think that he's going to totally fall off the face of the earth, but I do think that this group might cannibalize itself to where if you're talking about kind of like fantasy tight ends, and if you want any of these guys for the Chargers in just a year-to-year kind of draft, I don't know if any one of them is going to be putting up, a top 10 fantasy tight end season, because I think they're all going to be involved. I think Rondé Gadsden gets into the picture at some point in certain packages too. So it will be a much better tight end room. The tight end room as a whole, I think, is going to contribute much more than they did last season when it was a one-man show. But I think that it's hard to say one guy is going to, have an insane season. But if I was guessing, I would say Tyler Conklin is going to be the one that leads the tight ends in receiving in 2025. But let's sneak one more in here, David, because we had so many good ones. This one from Miles Williams, who says, buy or sell the weapons additions we made this offseason will more than offset the lack of changes on the interior of the offensive line. This is a juicy one. What do you think?
Yeah, it is a juicy one, but I'm going to buy it. And the reason why I'm going to buy it is because, not only was the offensive line an issue last year, but the running game was an issue, and the weapons were an issue. The running game is unequivocally better than now when you have Omarion Hampton and Najee Harris in that room, and the weapons are much, much better. We talked about all of them, all the draft picks, the Tyler Conklins, the Mike Williams. They have a lot more options, and they better hope that those receivers and those weapons are able to do what is intended, which is obviously control the game on the ground and get open when you're asked to get open. I think it absolutely will offset, because we as fans and as analysts look at every single deficiency and want them to address every single thing, and it's just not possible. It's just not something that's going to happen. But I think as a whole, this offense is in a much, much better spot than it was last year.
I think because of the addition of Mekhi Becton, I can buy this slightly offsetting it, or at least, improving enough for me to think it won't be as much of an issue as last season, for sure. I think one of the things with that last game against the Texans is the offensive line and the interior in particular has kind of been scapegoated to a certain extent to make you forget about some of the other major issues in that game, like the total lack of running game, the fact that outside of Ladd McConkey, they didn't have a receiving option that could hold their weight in salt. Like, it was just there was nothing. Like, they didn't have the talent, and it all combined in horrific fashion, right? Where each one of those things help highlight another flaw on their team.
Yeah.
So they did so much to add to all those other things that it does mitigate to some degree the lack of change on the interior of their offensive line. That being said, if you were to tell me the Chargers season ends in anything other than a Super Bowl, what's the reason it happened? Right now, I'm going to say it's the interior of the offensive line. And no matter how good your weapons are, no matter how much you think you've improved, it feels like this team still could self-destruct to a certain extent because of the interior of the offensive line, because you have more than likely at left guard and center two of the three major issues that you had on your offensive line last season. So it's still an issue, but what I would say is the running game being better is the biggest addition for this offensive line, because not taking losses or minimal gains is by default going to put the offensive line just in such favorable positions compared to last season, where much easier to expose an offensive line on 3rd and 10 than it is on 3rd and 4. So from that, standpoint, I do think there is something to that where they're like, okay, well, if our running game is so much better and we have better weapons, we'll be able to mask the deficiencies in the interior of our offensive line better. And that part I would buy. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. Again, now we are down to 3 shows a week. We will be back with you guys tomorrow, hopefully talking about the Chargers practice and having some fresh content for you there, and then back again on Friday. But so make sure you guys don't miss it. Go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from, as well as finding the show every day on our social media, where you can also hit us up for these fan shows and get your opinions and thoughts and questions on the show on Twitter at Locked On LAC, on Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. And if you want to, you can call into the voicemail line at 323-524-7924 and give us your 30-second Chargers voicemail. It makes it more likely to get on the show. We've had a lot of great voicemails. Thank you guys for calling in, and hopefully we'll get some more from you on Friday. But we'll be back with you guys tomorrow to talk about the latest of Chargers news coming out of this mini camp season. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.